All right, now clock this. Y'all over here blaming your daddies for leaving, but the whole time that man was trying to escape the voodoo, the santeria, and the magic that your mother was putting on him. Okay, nobody wants to talk about it because a lot of these women had these children to bind that man to them. And the men do the same thing. They will literally, like Offset, have a child with a person just to keep them attached to them energetically, physically, mentally, and emotionally. That is a form of manipulation and power and domination. That's the oldest trick in the book. Okay? Nobody talks about how fathers literally leave because of the backfires that happen in love spells that your mama put on them. Nobody talks about how the grandmas be sabotaging the grandsons, the granddaughters, they own kids. They be telling everybody's business. They be using gossip as a form of spiritual warfare against their own children because they didn't get to live their life. So they want to live it vicariously through everybody else, but the only way they can do that is to bring everybody else down to their vibe and have the whole family gossiping and spreading generational curses, okay? Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody talks about how the family secrets are so horrible that grandma will take it to her grave. That's how bad the family secrets are. I'm talking about sexual abuse. I'm talking about physical abuse, all types of trauma that was just not healed in the family, and nobody wants to talk about it. We don't talk about how families will literally triangulate you in their drama and keep you in a toxic cycle of abuse because everybody else has been abused and everybody is so used to the abuse that it's like a form of bonding to them. Abuse to them is bonding because instead of their parents communicating with them and talking about their feelings and actually having open conversations, it was always the elders telling the kids to be quiet, therefore leading the kids into blind obedience. And that's why our parents are traumatized and they think that giving us the bare minimum is enough when it's not. That's why our parents don't believe, especially in the Black and Hispanic community and other communities. That's why a lot of Hispanic and Black men don't go to therapy because they don't believe in therapy because they were told to be hard. And that's why they exert this over masculinity within society. Because they weren't allowed to express their emotions. And when they were expressing their emotions, they were told they were too feminine. Or they had mothers that were literally using them as emotional incest husbands. Yeah, there's a lot of mothers out here that we don't talk about that literally have an infatuation with their sons. They have an infatuation with their sons and they don't want the daughter-in-law to get married to that son because she is energetically bound to that son. She wants that son for emotional support, for material support, resources. She needs that son to take care of her because a lot of these narcissistic women that have kids, they have kids to praise them. They want their kids to be indebted to them. That's why they have kids and try to bind these men. And when the man decides to leave because they realize that she's a crazy witch, the kids got to suffer for that. That's why some of you men come to me in these sessions and y'all tell me that y'all have so many problems within your relationships because you have hatred towards your mom because your mom was making you her emotional incest husband. And you're tired of literally taking care of her emotional needs because your needs are not being taken care of. Same thing for women. A lot of your mothers taught y'all to be grown women and adults at a young age because they wanted you later to take care of them. Yeah. You were a check. You were a resource. And thank God for the people out here that are parenting their children right. Because for the ones that didn't have that good parenting, the trauma that we live with is embedded in our DNA. And it is our job now to break those generational curses so that when we have kids, it's not passed down. But no one wants to talk about it. How are we going to resolve the issue if no one wants to talk about it? And if your family gaslights you when you speak out about it, it's because they're a part of the abusive cycle. No one wants to talk about that, though. Everyone wants to ignore it and act like it's normal. And then when people have their breaking point, they have a topic to gossip about within the family. And this is the reason why there is a lot of religious hurt, because religion was specifically placed in people's lives and in these families' lives to manipulate and control and keep people in bondage to their families and indebted to their families. And it is scientifically proven through psychology that religion actually damages your brain. Because when you're not able to consciously expand your frontal cortex and think outside the box and expand your consciousness, that literally damages your brain. It traumatizes you. And that's why I say trauma lives in your DNA. A lot of people that have BPD and generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder, these people were not born with it. It was created from childhood trauma. There are times when people can have genetic dispositions, but from what I've learned from the DSM-5, a lot of this can also be through our environment. And if our environment was chaotic half of our life, we spend most of our lives in survival mode. And so our children have to suffer for that because we are only able to provide them with their basic needs. If you never had emotional support from your mother and your father, it can be very difficult for you to communicate effective boundaries and stick to them and hold people accountable. It can be easy to fall into this cycle of being a people pleaser and allowing people to walk over you. And it can be easy for you to become emotionally distraught, and people use reactive abuse to get you to act out of character. And a lot of people don't want to talk about these problems within our families because it's something that a lot of us repress subconsciously. The one thing that I liked about Sigmund Freud was he really spoke about the ego, the idea, the ID, and the superego. And when you break those down, there is a level of consciousness that a lot of us don't activate, that we repress. And it has a lot to do with our ego. Our ego looks for the impulse, the things that drive up our natural reaction. The ID is something that keeps everything in check. It tries to rationalize all of the experiences that we go through. And then you have the superego that goes between these two to balance everything, because the ego is our darker impulses. And a lot of people live within that darker impulse. And this is where defense mechanisms come from. When people are defensive, that comes from their ego. Because a lot of the times, people repress the darker aspects of themselves. So everything is subconscious. I want us to start having more discussions about ways that we can bring up this repressed trauma so that we can heal. Because we don't talk about it enough in our communities, and mental health is serious. If your mind, body, and soul are not in balance, your physical vessel will pay for that, your mental health will pay for that, and your spiritual health and emotional